Welcome back to Reds Fusion LFC, your ultimate home for all the latest Liverpool transfer drama and breaking news. Today, we dive deep into the red-hot battle between Liverpool and Newcastle over Alexander Isak's $200 price tag, plus fresh updates on Marc Guehi and Arne Slot's behind-the-scenes moves. Stay tuned, Reds. This is going to be big. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with every twist and turn in the transfer window. Newcastle urged to hold firm on $200 million Alexander Isak demand. As Liverpool keeps circling, Alexander Isak has refused to play for Newcastle in protest at the collapse of his proposed move to Liverpool. But former Toon favorite Wharton believes the club should stand firm. Newcastle supporters will forgive, but not forget Alexander Isak's summer protest. The Swedish forward has refused to play in objection to the breakdown of his proposed transfer to Liverpool, Newcastle's Premier League rivals, on Monday evening. However, Toon legend Wharton believes that boss Eddie Howe must remain resolute and either retain him at St. James's Park or demand maximum compensation. Wharton understands big money moves. The now 56-year-old, who featured in over 165 matches for Toon across 7 seasons, became Britain's most costly defender when he joined Newcastle for $4 million, 3.9 meters, in 1995. He said, "I just hope for the sake of football in the sense that the club make him stay or get 150 meters, around 202 meter for him. Unless they offer him that type of money, don't let him go. I think someone has to make a stand. You can't just put down tools and think that that's going to be enough to get away. Life shouldn't work like that. I know the modern game, it's a business, but it should also be about loyalty. It wasn't too long ago that he signed a new contract. I'm always someone who wants to forgive and forget and move on because he's a good player. And I genuinely think Alex is a good lad, but he's being badly advised at the moment. I don't agree with the burning of the shirt. I don't think that's right. Isak has scored goals and been excellent for us in the last couple of years. For me, he's part of the family. At the moment, you wonder how he could play for Newcastle again. But if all this resolves itself and he bangs in a last-minute winner against someone in September, then it's happy days again. Newcastle kicked off their season with a goalless draw at Aston Villa last weekend. With Isak's situation still up in the air as Liverpool come to town, it's set to be a massive week on Tyneside. But the club should embrace the "in Eddie we trust" mindset, Wharton insists. After squeaking into the Champions League and winning a first trophy in 70 years in domestic football, Eddie has done a great job, he said. We still haven't got a sporting director at the moment, but to bring the players we've brought in has given everyone a real lift. Then you throw a spanner in the works, and it feels like a little bit of doom and gloom. But at the end of the day, we've strengthened our squad, we're in the Champions League, and are probably in a better position than we were last time we were there. I'm a big fan of Eddie. I spoke to him in Philadelphia when they were over here in preseason, and I said, don't deviate. To be fair, he has stuck to his guns and kept going. He keeps believing. He has kept a level head. Oliver Glasner confesses fresh Marc Guehi worry as Liverpool's pursuit continues. Liverpool have already opened talks with Crystal Palace over the transfer of Marc Guehi as they aim to bolster Arne Slot's defense before the summer transfer window closes. Crystal Palace's manager, Oliver Glasner, has expressed concerns over finding an apt replacement for Marc Guehi amid Liverpool transfer links. The Reds have already initiated discussions with Crystal Palace regarding the transfer of Guehi, aiming to strengthen Arne Slot's defense before the summer transfer window shuts. Liverpool have 2 potential paths with Guehi. They could negotiate a deal with their Premier League counterparts and sign him this summer, or they could bide their time until next year when the central defender's contract runs out and he becomes available on a free transfer. It's understood that Palace's current asking price exceeds what the Reds are prepared to pay, but there are still 8 days left in the window to test their determination. Glasner appears to be the main obstacle for Liverpool, as he is reluctant to see his squad size diminish any further. The rumors of Guehi's move to Anfield come as Palace have just offloaded star forward Eberechi to Arsenal for a hefty $91 million. 3 others have departed as free agents, while the Eagles have only spent a modest $2.7 million this summer, bringing in 2 new faces to bolster Glasner's FA Cup winning team, who will have to balance Premier League responsibilities with the UEFA Europa Conference League this season. I am worried about Crystal Palace if we are losing players and we don't get the right ones in, the manager told BBC Sport ahead of his side's match against Nottingham Forest at Selhurst Park. It is my duty as manager to tell the owners what we have to do to be competitive and stay on our pathway. Nevertheless, whilst demonstrating his determination to retain his skipper, Glasner managed to offer a light-hearted solution should he fail to prevent the departure. He added, "If Marc leaves, I will try my boots because I was a centre-back and this could be a good option." The 50-year-old enjoyed a 12-year playing career during which he accumulated nearly 600 appearances for Austrian club SV Ried before concluding his time on the pitch with LASK. Liverpool had previously been cautioned by the Palace manager that any bid to secure Guehi this summer would stretch until the final moments, as he requires the defender's availability for Thursday's conference league qualifying second leg against Norwegian opponents Fredrikstad. The Eagles secured a 1-0 first-leg lead at Selhurst Park, with Guehi featuring from the start. Following that match, Glasner stated, "I just know if Marc leaves and is not available for Fredrikstad, we will have big troubles. That's pretty clear. We can't register anyone, so from my side, he has to stay." Throughout this saga, Liverpool have remained content to bide their time and would readily accept securing their target next year if it guarantees acquiring him without a transfer fee. Real Madrid transfer twist shows Liverpool must abandon Alexander Isak pursuit and adopt new target. Liverpool continues to pursue Alexander Isak, but a deal now looks unlikely amid Newcastle's unwillingness to do business. But another target should be considered in a different position. Liverpool's chances of signing Alexander Isak appear to be decreasing by the day, with time running out for the Reds to convince Newcastle to sell the wanaway striker. Even if the Reds were to stump up an offer that Newcastle might deem acceptable for Isak, the Magpies would not have much time to acquire an adequate replacement. Newcastle and Eddie Howe have consistently maintained that the door is open for Isak to be reintegrated when he is ready to return, and in a World Cup season, it seems unlikely that Isak's stubbornness will win out over his desire to represent. Sweden next summer asked ahead of Monday's game against Liverpool whether he hopes Isak will eventually be integrated back into the Newcastle squad. Howe responded, "Yes, of course. He's contracted to us. He's our player. My wish is that he would be playing on Monday night with us, but he won't be, and that's regrettable. I have no doubt about how the players will feel about Isak returning. They will feel the same way. I do. Alex is a fantastic player. He's a good person, a good character, and a good lad. If Alex wanted to come back and play for us, the players would welcome him." While the Isak saga goes on, another interesting saga might be brewing, as Crystal Palace midfielder Adam Wharton is being linked with a blockbuster move to Real Madrid. Madrid's midfield has seen plenty of change over the last couple of years with the departures of Toni Kroos and Luka Modric. Their exits left behind a talented clutch of younger stars, but for many of those youngsters, their best trait is their athleticism rather than their playmaking and general guile on the ball. Wharton's tempo-setting performances for Palace have earned plenty of plaudits over the last couple of years, and the expectation is that he will move to a bigger club sooner, rather than later. A move to Madrid before the closure of the transfer window seems unlikely, particularly as Palace is under no pressure to sell the England youngster, but were Los Blancos to step up their pursuit of Wharton, it would be interesting to see whether any Premier League clubs might try and intervene. Liverpool is well stocked in midfield at the moment, and even if the Reds do like Wharton, it's unlikely that they would intervene, given Arne Slot has other priorities in the coming days. But that's not to say they shouldn't. Liverpool's midfield looked a tad imbalanced in preseason, and that issue has followed them into the start of the season, and signing someone like Wharton would go some way toward addressing the problem. Arne Slot admits texts with Eddie Howe as Liverpool set for Alexander Isak transfer fury a lot has happened between the clubs since Arne Slot and Eddie Howe exchanged pleasantries over messages in the aftermath of Newcastle's Carabao Cup victory against the Reds at Wembley. Arne Slot has only shared texts with one fellow Premier League manager, and that's Eddie Howe. He respects his rival so much he has backed him to one day become England head coach, but whether or not the Newcastle boss would be so receptive to messages at the moment from his Liverpool counterpart may be discovered on Monday evening when they meet at St. James's Park. A lot has happened between the clubs since. Slot and Howe exchanged pleasantries over messages in the aftermath of Newcastle's Carabao Cup victory against the Reds at Wembley. Most obviously, Liverpool's pursuit of Alexander Isak, the Magpies frontman who has gone on strike to force a move to Anfield. "I don't know," Slot said when asked if this summer's events have damaged relations between the clubs. "The only manager I've ever texted with was Eddie Howe in the Premier League. In Holland, I texted with a few more, but after the League Cup final, we did exchange a few messages. If I see him, I will be the same as I was last year, and I expect nothing different from him as well. On a higher level, I have no clue. For me, it's still the same relationship with him. Liverpool will arrive in the Northeast on Monday night as mighty villains. But they'll face a Newcastle side weakened by Isak's absence and a summer, where they've failed, so far at least, to sign their top targets with the exception of Anthony Elanga, Jacob Ramsey, Malik Thiaw, and Aaron Ramsdale. It is in attack where they are light given Isak's strike and the failure to sign numerous forward targets, including Hugo Ekitike, who will line up for Liverpool. Slot and Howe have a mutual connection. In Richard Hughes, Liverpool's sporting director who played with the Newcastle manager at Portsmouth before working together at Bournemouth, and he cites that as the reason they've connected. In general, I have sympathy for Eddie Howe because he is a great human being. He's always polite, so that is my general feeling about him, said the Liverpool boss. It's maybe not a coincidence that I've texted with him because I think he's a very nice and honest, polite colleague. For the rest, I don't need to have sympathy for a manager that can still have the availability of Anthony Gordon, Jacob Murphy, Elanga, Harvey Barnes. Liverpool ready to block star players' transfer. The situation with the Swedish striker is very complicated at the moment. Isak will be frustrated that he hasn't been granted the move he has wanted all summer. Liverpool fans are frustrated that the deal hasn't happened yet, as will Liverpool's board. Meanwhile, Newcastle fans are frustrated by the way Isak has gone about forcing a move to Anfield. At the end of the day, there is none sensible solution in this, and that is for the Magpies to get a move on and find replacements for their star player. Isak staying at Newcastle is simply not tenable. Sure, he may ultimately play a few games for the club if he's forced to stay, but ultimately his heart won't be in it. The supporters will be resentful towards him, and eventually he'll leave anyway, potentially for less money. Isak's transfer is having an impact on Liverpool's wider transfer activity as well. The Reds have already parted ways with a number of attackers this summer. Luis Diaz and Darwin Núñez have both left. Ben Doak has also joined Bournemouth, so the Reds have lost a lot of depth, which means they will be very careful in how they go about their business for the rest of the window, especially amid interest in the likes of Federico Chiesa and Harvey Elliott. The Italian hasn't played a lot of games for the club, but he has become somewhat of a cult hero. His goal against Bournemouth at Anfield definitely solidified those sentiments. It also helps that he has an extremely catchy chant, so catchy that Arsenal supporters are trying to mimic it with Ebereki Eze. Ultimately, Chiesa will want more playing time, and he has been the subject of interest. However, he might not be going anywhere. That's according to Graham Bailey speaking to Rousing the Cop, who claims that if the Reds do not get Isak, Chiesa's transfer away from the club will be blocked. I think the first thing they do is not let Chiesa out, Bailey said. I don't think they would bring an Isak alternative in unless it was someone who they already liked. I don't think there'll be a stopgap option. So it sounds like Liverpool may not necessarily have an Isak alternative. The solution, if the Swede doesn't join the club, is to block any potential transfer for Chiesa and to use the Italian as a backup in the center-forward position. Given the fact that Chiesa has averaged a goal or assist every 95 minutes, he has. Spent on the pitch for Liverpool, it's ultimately not a bad idea, but we hope that Liverpool are able to get Isak over the line and hopefully find a way to retain Chiesa as well. He's just a useful presence to have in and around the squad, and a valuable player off the bench. Eddie Howe says Alexander Isak, future irrelevant when Newcastle face Liverpool. The Magpies opened their campaign with a 0-0 draw at Aston Villa and will be seeking a first win of the season against the champions. Eddie Howe insists Alexander Isak's future will be irrelevant when Newcastle attempt to claim their first Premier League win of the season against defending champions Liverpool. The Magpies' head coach has spent much of his summer being grilled about the future of his star striker, with the Reds having launched a $110 million bid for the services of a player who is valued by his current employers at $150 million. The Sweden international, who has been training alone after missing Newcastle's pre-season tour to Singapore and South Korea, will play no part in Monday night's game between the two clubs at St. James's Park, and while Howe desperately wants the player to stay, he will not give him a second thought. Asked what message victory over Liverpool without Isak would send, the 47-year-old said, "I don't think it is sending out a message without Alex. You send messages every day and with every performance. We are looking to start the season." Well, Alex's situation is irrelevant, really. When the game starts, it's about us playing to the best of our ability and showing the fighting spirit we did against Aston Villa. Newcastle's stance on Isak has been unwavering all summer, and Liverpool are yet to table a bid they believe is worthy of their consideration, even if they could recruit the two front men they would need if he was to be allowed to leave. But asked further if the hierarchy had demonstrated a refusal to be bullied, Howe said, "I don't necessarily think that the club are trying to make that stance. I think they are just reacting to this situation and making decisions based on what they think is the best for Newcastle United. They are being strong on the valuations of players and on how a player leaves the football club. All of these things are important. They are important on this situation and also the future." Howe's men played well in last weekend's 0-0 draw at Villa Park, but ultimately lacked the cutting edge to win the game, a fact which highlighted Isak's absence. The way in which the Swede has been unsettled this summer, he claims promises, have been broken, an accusation denied by the Magpies, has angered fans on Tyneside, and the atmosphere under the lights at St. James's promises to be febrile. Howe said, "Newcastle versus Liverpool is always a very special game. I can picture previous Premier League encounters over the years with vivid memories of moments and drama in the games, and this will be no different. Of course, I'm not stupid. I know what's around the fixture. I know the importance of it. It's our first home game of the season. All of these things just make it extra special."